Hi Nimbus community. My name is Alexandra and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Nimbus, your ultimate and easy access point to the best of both DeFi and traditional finance. This is the second episode of the Nimbus Academy where you can receive the juiciest facts and really useful strategies of how you can benefit from DeFi and also traditional financial tools. So this is the second episode because for the first one, we received really useful feedback and we saw how much you liked this initiative. So from now on, it's going to become a tradition and we will be launching more and more episodes of this kind. So thank you for your valuable feedback and also thank you for participating in the contest. We see how much you liked it, so this time we also are launching a contest where you can win some tokens, so do watch this video. Now, why you should watch this episode? There are many reasons, but first of all, I would like to say that this is not just for the newbies. It's also for people who maybe already tried liquidity providing at other platforms, but who would like to improve their results, their performance essentially. Because at this episode, you will not only learn the most basic terms and really see how you can get started as a liquidity provider, but you will also learn a lot of other things. For example, you will learn to pick the most promising pairs and projects. Another important thing is that you would learn to avoid the most critical pitfalls, like for instance the impermanent loss. Now, another important thing is you will discover strategies of maximizing your rewards, right? So really step-by-step guides of how you can do that, what you need to evaluate, and that is really not something that you can just easily find on the web. And another point is when you want to maximize your rewards, you need to calculate them, right? And you also need to predict them somehow. So that will also be covered in this episode. And finally, you will find out how you can apply all of this knowledge at Nimbus Platform with up to 100% APY. I think that is something that we certainly should discuss. So let's jump right in. I promise there will not be too much theory, right? It's just a couple of slides for those who are, still learning the basics of liquidity providing. Now, in order to really talk about liquidity providing, we need to understand the difference between the centralized and the decentralized exchanges, or SEXs and DEXs as they're normally called. So there are several key, let's say, parameters in each of them, as you can see on the slide, right? And the crucial one for us is that in DEXs, the transactions are not only decentralized, but also the liquidity is provided, not by centralized parties. So essentially any user can go at a decentralized exchange, let's say Nimbus Swap, and provide their liquidity there. But again, let's dive into the key terminology, right? So liquidity pools are a term that you have to know from the get-go. Essentially, liquidity pools are the smart contracts based, let's say, a reservoir of coins behind each trading pair at a DEX. That's essentially what makes it work, right? Without it, you would not be able to exchange one coin to another. Now, another important point is liquidity providers. And it's quite obvious, actually. Liquidity providers are those people who provide that liquidity to liquidity pools to ensure that transactions and token exchanges happen in a decentralized manner. And finally, the pool share is something that you will certainly encounter when you act as a liquidity provider. This term basically indicates which percent of the liquidity pool belongs to you. But we will study that in more detail later in other slides. Now, moving forward, why so many DeFi users become liquidity providers? This is one of the ways to make your assets work for you and to actually multiply your assets, right? But here, unlike in some other opportunities, you keep the asset ownership to yourself, right? You can provide liquidity and you can withdraw liquidity anytime, essentially. Again, it depends on the platform, but in many cases, that's how it works. And finally, when you provide liquidity, many platforms offer something that's called LP staking or some other options that really let you not only provide liquidity to the platform, but also multiply the liquidity that you already provided in other ways, like a second layer, right? I know it may sound a bit complicated at the beginning, but we will dive into it later, okay? But here is just one generic tip. It's really especially beneficial to become a liquidity provider if you expect the price of some token to appreciate in the future, but right now it's stagnant, so the token price in the pair is not really moving so fast. So one of the examples could be some of our tokens, and that's one of the use cases that you have for them. So let's move forward. How you can calculate your liquidity provider rewards at Nimbus. So the formula is actually very simple, right? You have to multiply the pair trading volume by the swap fee size, which in our case is 0.3%, and that's actually pretty much the same in many other platforms. And finally, you multiply that by your pool share. You remember what is a pool share, right? And, this is the calculation, but probably before entering a position, you also want to kind of estimate or predict your results for the future. So when you do that, you essentially have to look at three basic things, right? The first one is the 24-hour fee volume that you can see at the platform. That's historic data, and actually in most DEXs you will have that in open access. Like for instance at Nimbus Swap, you just have to go to our analytics page and you will see it there. Now, the second indicator is also pretty obvious. You need to look at the trade volume. But here, we suggest that you not only look at the trade volume, but also the trend over time. How is it changing? Is it growing or diminishing? And how would you predict it to move in the future? And finally, another simple thing, you have to look at the pool share dynamics, because of course that is something that defines your personal fee, right? Because you also share it with other liquidity providers as a reward. Because, well, that's why you provide your liquidity, to receive that share of fees. Now, moving forward, I bet many of you really would like to know the step-by-step action plan towards becoming a liquidity provider. And here it is. It's really very simple. It's just several steps. So let's go through them. Now, the first thing you have to do is, of course, pick a pair that you're interested in, right? Then you had to set equal values in terms of USD value, right, of both tokens. So let's say if you want to provide liquidity to the pair NBU and BNB, right, what you have to do is set a sum, let's say $100 worth of NBU, and it means that you will also have to supply $100 worth of BNB. This is done, of course, for the pair to actually work, for the exchange to function, because you need to have, let's say, equal reservoirs of coins on both ends. Now, the third point, what you have to do is provide your liquidity. And in exchange, you will receive something that's called LP tokens. And this is something that we will really dive in at the next slide. So just wait a second and we will dive into this. But now let's look at the example. Let's say if you put $200 worth of tokens in a pool which size is, let's say, $1,000, it means that you have 20% of that pool. So your pool share is 20%. It's quite easy. Now, once you've done that, you start receiving your shares of the swap fees based on your pool share size, right? Because, as I said already, you're splitting those fees with other liquidity providers. So the rewards are split. In our case, in Nimbus, the reward size is 0.3% of each swap. And finally, once you've had enough, let's say you already hit your goals, you're ready to withdraw your liquidity, that's cool, go for it. At Nimbus, for example, you can do it anytime. There are no limitations, just withdraw it anytime. Now, I've mentioned LP tokens, right? And this is one of the very important concepts in liquidity providing. So LP tokens, they act as, let's say, means of representing your liquidity, right? But it also provides you a chance to kind of duplicate your assets, because with LP tokens, you can do many different things, especially at Nimbus, because Nimbus is a holistic ecosystem. So we actually have a lot of, let's say, multi-layer strategies of how you can involve your assets in many aspects of the platform at once. And this is what gives you really increased rewards. But let's dive into this one. Now, since Nimbus is present on two blockchains, right? It's Ethereum and it's Binance Smart Chain. Liquidity Provider tokens are also of two standards. So it's ERC20 and BEP20. So with either of these tokens, they don't really have a difference between them. You can do several things. First of all, you can simply hold them to further claim your liquidity when you want to do that, right? You can just hold them in your wallets. It's really just like any other token, essentially, right? Second thing you can do with them is send them to other wallets. And by doing this, you will, let's say, pass your right to another wallet, and that wallet will be able to withdraw your liquidity. So it's kind of the same as the previous example, but here you're just passing the right. But now there is another more interesting thing. What you can do is use those LP tokens. For instance, at the Nimbus platform, in the lending borrowing app, you will soon have an option to provide these LP tokens as a collateral, right? And what that does is essentially lets you make your assets work in two directions at the same time. First of all, they're working as liquidity in the Nimbus swap and they're bringing you commissions, right? The swap fees. But on the other hand, you take your LP tokens and while your liquidity is still working, you leverage these LP tokens, let's say when you're taking a loan. So you receive more assets in return and you can use them over again. So you see what's the beauty of LP tokens here, right? But that is something that is not yet developed. It's one of our plans and I'm really excited about this one. But what you can do already now, not only at Nimbus actually, some other platforms have it as well, you can stake your LP tokens. And this is something that you certainly want to do as a liquidity provider. Here is why. With LP staking, you can receive two rewards at a time. You will continue receiving your fees as a liquidity provider, but at the same time, you will be receiving the staking APY, which in our case is 100% and it's fixed. So no matter what happens, it's 100%. And that's the beauty of it because you kind of control the situation, you know what you're going to receive. LP staking is actually similar to normal staking that you use for NBU or GMBU or other tokens at other platforms, but it's only accessible with LP tokens. That's where the name is coming from. Also, there is no minimum staking period, and that is very important because let's say usually when you pick between different staking options, you pick between the soft staking and hard staking, and your APY level depends on that. For hard staking, it's higher. For soft staking, it's lower. But here, it's essentially soft staking because there is no minimum staking period, but the APY is really big, it's 100%, and it's sustainable. Now, how you can use LP staking at Nimbus? Again, that's very simple, actually. What you need to do is just insert any sum in LP tokens to staking. It's number one. Then, straight away, you start receiving 100% APY in real time. And you can claim your rewards as well as actually claim your LP tokens back at any time. So it's ultimate flexibility. And finally, you will be continuing to receive your swap fees from the first round of liquidity providing, right? So you have two rewards at once. And if you are a liquidity provider, that's a great opportunity for you. Now let's move forward. So guys, everything looks rather simple so far, and it actually is. But there is one thing that you have to be careful with, and this thing is called impermanent loss. So impermanent loss illustrates how much more money or assets, however you call it, somebody would have if he simply held those assets in his wallet instead of actually providing those assets as liquidity. Now, I know it sounds a bit complicated, but we will look at an example later, right? Right now, let's just dig into why impermanent loss actually takes place. The reason is a change in the exchange rate. And it will take a while to actually explain why an exchange rate change triggers impermanent loss, because it is connected to how decentralized exchanges are built, right? There is a rather sophisticated algorithm behind it. If you want to deep dive into that, you can just make your own research. But now let's fix this. The reason for impermanent loss is exchange rate change. So let's say if I provide liquidity in NBU and BNB when, let's take some random numbers, when let's say NBU is worth $1 and BNB is also worth $1, then let's imagine that at some point NBU becomes twice as expensive, so it becomes $2 and BNB stays $1, right? So the exchange rate changes twofold, right? Now, to buy, let's say, 1 BNB, I need just half of NBU, not 1 NBU. So in this situation, you will face an impermanent loss. Now, what is important is that impermanent loss applies in both cases when the prices go down or when they go up. It doesn't matter really. What matters is that there is an exchange rate change. Now, and the final thing is that impermanent loss may apply even if the assets that you receive in return are actually more expensive than they were when you inserted the tokens as liquidity. Now, why does it happen? It happens because, as we already discussed, impermanent loss is not about losing your assets. It's more of a potential loss if you basically compare to different scenarios where you hold your assets as opposed to when you provide them as liquidity. So really, impermanent loss may not even be loss at all. You may have inserted, let's say, $20 worth of tokens, and then when you withdraw your liquidity, you withdraw not $20, but you withdraw $30, for example, right? But it may still be a loss if, in a scenario when you held those tokens in the wallet, you received more than $30. And one more thing that I would like to stress here is that there is a difference between impermanent loss and permanent loss. And the difference is very simple. Essentially, the impermanent loss becomes permanent when you actually redeem your tokens when the exchange rate is different. It's very simple. So impermanent loss is an opportunity and permanent loss is the reality. Now, let's go to the second slide and actually see an example how it works, because it may be a bit hard to conceive it like this. Now, let's imagine that 1 NBU, as I said, is $1 and 1 BNB is also $1. Whatever, it's random numbers, but we don't care for the sake of simplicity. Now, I imagine that I insert $10 worth of NBU and also $10 worth of BNB as liquidity. So in the end, I provide $20 worth of liquidity. Now let's imagine that the exchange rate changes and 1 NBU becomes much more expensive, actually twice more expensive, and now it costs $2, and 1 BNB stays the same. So the exchange rate changes twofold. Now, if I was simply holding those tokens, I would now have $30 worth of tokens. But if I provide those as liquidity, I would have less, right? Let's say I have $28. So the impermanent loss here is $2. And if at this point of time I decide to actually withdraw my liquidity, I would have a permanent loss of $2. Now, how you can calculate the impermanent loss? As we already discussed, the formula is actually very simple. So basically, it's present value of your initial liquidity, right? So the initial tokens that you inserted when you provided liquidity, minus the present value, again, of your current liquidity. So basically the liquidity or the number of tokens that you can redeem when you withdraw your liquidity, okay? It's really very simple. But in order to save your time, guys, below you can see the actual numbers of how it would look like, how your permanent loss could look like when the exchange rate changes. So if it changes by 25%, your loss will be just 0.4%. It's really not much, right? But as the change of your exchange rate grows, so does the loss that you receive. But again, even if the exchange rate changes 5 times, which is really a lot, and of course, in crypto world, everything happens, but this is something that you can really track and, avoid. So even then, your loss would be 25%. So that is a bad scenario, of course, but this is not so awful. It's not so risky. So knowing these numbers, I'm sure you can feel more confident acting as a liquidity provider. And there is also a very important tip that we would like to provide to you here, which is when you calculate your loss, please don't forget to also take into consideration the rewards that you receive, right? Because you don't simply provide your assets, you provide them so that they multiply, so that they work for you. So let's say if you use LP staking, you receive, again, 2 types of rewards. And if you calculate how much you receive from, let's say, 100% APY per month, that's already a lot. So you can really offset the majority of this impermanent loss sizes that are listed here. Now, let's move forward. This is an important topic, so let us give you really actionable tips on how exactly you can avoid the impermanent loss. Essentially, there are 4 things that you can do. The first one is really connected to the price dynamics. So what you need to do is really be cautious with the pairs where one token, as you think, may appreciate significantly faster than the other one. Of course, this is just your opinion, and of course you may be wrong, but that is something that you certainly have to do. Now, second thing that you have to do is really, when possible, try to opt for the pairs with stable coins, because essentially then one of the coin exchange rate will not really change because it's stable coin. So you really cut your risks by a lot. And this is a really cool thing that you can do. Now, another thing that we already discussed is the exit rates. You should not claim your liquidity when the rate has changed, right? So if you entered the pair when it was X, you should not exit the pair when it's like X plus 5 or X minus 10 or whatever. Again, it depends on your strategy, of course, right? Because as we just discussed, some loss size can be okay for you, especially if it's covered by the rewards that you receive. But this is something to be cautious with, okay? And finally, there is another interesting thing. So many of you may know that there are different types of DEXs. And when you provide liquidity, what you need to do is you really need to study different DEXs and see what, let's say, mechanism works best for you. Because as I said before, in most DEXs, you need to provide liquidity in equal values in terms of USD values, right? If you provide BNB and NBU, you should provide both $10 worth of BNB and $10 worth of NBU. But that's not everywhere like that. There are exceptions, and some DEXs allow you to actually provide liquidity with unevenly weighted pools. And if you predict and model the future situation in a right way, then you can actually diminish your risk depending on this weight categories, okay? I know it sounds complicated, and this is actually something that we would not recommend to newbies, because actually when those three ways of avoiding impermanent loss are already kind of enough for you. But if you want to dig deeper, this is something you can explore for yourself. Again, you can Google that. Or you can also ask it below the video, by the way, and we will try to respond as soon as we can. Now, talking about all these good things that you should consider is cool, but we would like to give you something actionable so you can just go and implement it and maximize your rewards. So here is a really step-by-step guide of how you can avoid the impermanent loss, how you can get started, and really do it with maximum efficiency. So before actually providing liquidity, how you can prepare yourself. First of all, you need to study both token price trends. And we're not talking about the price or actually the exchange rate within the pair. We're talking about prices of both tokens in USD values. That is important. Now, second, what you need to do is estimate the rewards and also the gas fees that you will have to receive or pay. It's also important to mention that on Nimbus Platform, you can actually pay much less gas fees because we are present on Binance Smart Chain, right? So you can save a lot of money there. But as per the rewards, again, you need to estimate how much rewards you will receive throughout your period of liquidity providing. And then once you've done that, then you need to compare it to potential impermanent loss that again, you are, let's say, predicting for yourself based on the token prices and trade volumes and everything that we discussed. And then what experts advise is just to provide liquidity for 2 weeks. And then you will see if you want to prolongate, if the results are good or not. And you will decide on that based on the values that you track on the daily basis, right? You have to track the rate of the tokens that you provided as liquidity, and if the rewards are paid to you in a native token, like at Nimbus, for example, where you receive it in NB, yeah, then you also have to track the exchange rate and essentially the price of that native token because you receive rewards in it. And of course, another thing, you need to take a look at the pool shares because that is, according to our formula, if you remember, that's what defines the size of your fees when you provide liquidity. I think this is very actionable, and you can just, after you finish watching this video, simply pick some pair and try to go through this process, and you will see how easy it is to predict all of this. Again, based, of course, on the market data and also on opinions of third-party experts, because not everybody can predict all of this. Well, that's a different topic. Now, again, we have 3 tips for you guys. First of all, you should definitely opt for pairs with LP staking because that is where you can receive a lot of rewards, right? So you want to maximize that. So go for it. Now, point 2 is you should certainly avoid LP staking options which have very high APY because that is not only sometimes indication of a scam, but also when rewards are paid at huge amounts, then, well, it's quite obvious that a lot of those rewards, they go directly dumped at the market. And that, again, affects the price of the token, in which, for instance, you're getting your rewards. So that is also not good for you as a participant of that ecosystem. And, well, to be fair, I mean, it's not so good to design that kind of schemes also from the point of view of tokenomics. So that's not the best option you want to go for. And finally, of course, you need to work with DEXs with proven security. Through audit, through bug bounties, through opinions of third-party experts, pick whatever, but be sure that this DEX is really audited properly and your assets are safe when working there. Let's move forward. Now, actually, this is one of our final slides because now you know the strategies, you know where to look at, you know what are the pitfalls, how to actually predict them, how to estimate and calculate them. But if we talk about Nimbus LP staking, really it's time to combine all this knowledge in one spot and see why this is a good opportunity for you to actually practice everything that we have just discussed. So when you become an LP at Nimbus Platform, you really can enjoy one of the highest LP rewards in DeFi, including flexibility, including high and predictable rewards with both LP staking and also good shares of swap fees in the DEX. So let's go step by step. Now, the first thing that you will enjoy is, of course, the share of all the swap fees, and it's important to know that they are accrued in real time, right? And you have all the supportive data to actually see what's happening with your rewards and to claim them anytime. Okay? The second good thing about Nimbus is that you have really predictable rewards with LP staking because they're not always fixed, right? But at Nimbus Platform, they are. It's 100 APY fixed, and you will receive it in NBU. And the good thing is that there is no vesting, right? You can put your assets anytime, you can withdraw them anytime, you receive the rewards in real time. It's all very flexible, right? And finally, the third point is precisely about flexibility, because there are no sum restrictions, and you can also do anything you want with your assets because you are the one who is owning them, and you are the one who is really making the decisions to either put them or withdraw them. Now, let us actually walk you through the platform very quickly. It's not a full guide, even though we will be preparing a really professional video guide for you guys, but these are just the general steps that you have to consider. So if you want to get started, what you need to do is just to go to the section that's called Pool. You can find it in the menu, and then you need to press Add Liquidity. That's where you will be able to actually pick a pair, set the sum that you would like to provide as liquidity, and, well, actually add the liquidity to the pool. And in return, you will receive the LP tokens. And as you can see at the screenshots, you will see all the supporting data all along the way. You will see what's your pool share, you will see what's the exchange rate when you are entering the pool, right? You will see how many LP tokens you receive. Everything will be there, okay? It's really easy. And then when you insert the tokens, you will see this thing. As you can see, it's called Account Analytics and Accrued Fees. So you can go there and see all the statistics about your own liquidity, about the liquidity pools. Everything will be found there. But you don't want to stop there, right? You want to go to the LP staking. So for that, you have to go to another section of the website, which is called LP staking, obviously. And there, you simply pick the pair of your LP tokens, right? Because different LP tokens serve different pools, right? So you need to find the one that actually suits your pair, but that will be very easy because you will see the buttons will actually help you navigate. Once you're there, you simply pick the amount of LP tokens that you would like to insert, right? And then once that's done, essentially you will see again all the information right there. It works just like common staking. So you will see your staking deposit amount, you will see how much rewards you already have, and the rewards that you can actually claim. You will even see how much you will have per week. But actually, this is something important. You have to understand that this is a predicted number, right? It can change based on the value of your LP tokens. Because as I said already, the APY level, which is 100 APY, it's fixed. So what changes is really the value of your LP tokens, which is also something that is connected to impermanent loss. So don't be surprised, okay? It's something that is common in all platforms. And finally, you will see your unused LP token balance that you can deposit to actually get more rewards from your staking. So guys, that's really it. It's all very easy. Just go and try it yourself at Nimbus Platform to really claim all this amazing benefits and rewards. And below the video, you will have the link, right, which will lead you directly to the pool section where you can start your journey. So guys, that's actually it. And there is just one more thing that I would like to share with you, which is the contest that we're having this time. And this time you can win 1000 NBU, and all you need to do for that is, of course, like the video. Then you have to do one very simple thing. You have to go through the video again and simply count how many times I said the word Nimbus. I believe I said it many times, so please be cautious and actually count the correct number. And once you've done, all you need to do is retweet on Twitter the post and share the number that you receive after counting the number of words. And here you go. You will have a chance to become one of the 3 randomly picked winners to receive 1000 NBU each. Go ahead, guys. Try it out. The link is below. It's all in your hands. You just have to test it and you will see that it's all very easy actually. And especially you can test it with a very small number of assets, especially on Binance Smart Chain, because the gas fees are really low. So we wish you luck on that. We're always here. We're always supporting you in the chat on Telegram, in our social media, Twitter. So just interact with us, ask all your questions either here in the comments or in other social media. And I'm wishing you good luck and thanking you for staying with me. See you at the next episode, guys, and enjoy your week.